So this is a fascinating story that many of you asked me to talk about. At the top, I don't know anything about soccer, so if I mispronounce any names or get any basic things wrong whenever it comes to the game, forgive me. Let's put this up there on the screen from the New York Times. Billionaires bluster in the Super League that wasn't. So Ryan, as I understand it, the top 8 or so teams in European soccer wanted to come together, break away from the current structure of where they play in, band together in order to make more money, and basically in order to cleave themselves away from like less competitive, less teams, because they say that it costs them too much money. Now, at the core of this is about an owner concern that they are spending too much playing in game, again, as I understand it, playing in games and against teams that they do not deem worthy, so they want to play each other. And I was really fascinated by how this is the kind of epitomization of what they are calling the infiltration of American values ruining European football. So I saw this in the New York Times. His name is James Montague. He wrote a book on the rise of football's super rich owners. I mean, soccer there whenever he's talking about it. But what he says there is that the problem that has occurred is that European soccer teams were seen as, quote, community assets rooted in a town or in a neighborhood. If there was an owner, he tended to be a local businessman who'd done good. But owners were considered custodians of the club by the fan base. Teams almost never left their city. But what happened is that with the commercialization of soccer and with the infiltration of billionaire owners of each one of these clubs, is that then they began to say, we need to maximize profit the way that the NFL does here in our country. And so what they're saying here is that this is like the infiltration and the exporting of our commercialization of sports over to a long-standing communitarian tradition around local soccer leagues, which are very important to European culture. And I just think it's fascinating because it all fell apart. The Europeans were like, no, we're not tolerating this. There was if you want to talk about populist uprising, oh man, from what I understand, people across the pond were really pissed off. It's just a fascinating thing, whenever you see our stuff exported across our shores and the Europeans just say, absolutely not, you are not going to ruin soccer, which, means so much to all of us. And we've just kind of allowed ourselves to fall into where we are while they're saying, absolutely, it's not coming over here.
Yeah, it really did play out as an allegory of kind of American hegemonic capitalism versus European localism. And,
right.
And I think appropriately so in some ways. And the different reactions were interesting. In America, we always look at anything that goes on with European soccer with kind of bemusement.
Yes.
And
I don't really get it,
right.
but I'm glad you guys are having fun.
Right. So we hear that their top 8 teams are going to form a super league and they're all going to play each other, and we're like, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what
you make more money, right?
That's what we would do.
Yeah.
The higher ratings for these teams. And I'm sure the owners are annoyed that they feel like they're subsidizing these lesser teams. That they're drafting off of the fame and the money that they're spending on their better teams. And so Americans shrug and they're like, okay, well that's the march of global capitalism, and that's where it heads. And Europeans are like, no, it doesn't. We are a society.
Yeah.
And we're still a democratic society where people can have some input, and we're going to have input by screaming about this, and we're going to stop it because sports. There's nothing more nostalgic, really, than sports. The people who are protesting this grew up watching it with their parents. Their parents grew up watching it with their parents, and on and on and on. And it creates a connection to place. And global capitalism is destined to just annihilate space as a concern. You can only have capital flows, whereas in Europe they're like, no, space actually matters. Home matters. Community matters. You might own this on paper, but we own it in our hearts, and that won, and I think that's a triumph to be celebrated.
I know, I agree. I'm for it. The moment I really learned about it, I was like, wait, this is BS. This is really messed up. And I heard from a lot of our European fan base being like, you guys have to cover this. This is like the biggest populist thing. And the more I learned about it, it really was a tale of just like corrupt, greedy people who wanted to maximize profits at the expense of a hundreds years old tradition. And more importantly, what a lot of people feel brings a lot of meaning to their lives. lives.
And to tie it back to America, Alec McGillis has a great new book out called Fulfillment.
We had him on here on the show.
And and at its core, it's about regional inequality, about how there's not just inequality within cities and within regions, but major cities,
winner take all within states,
are pulling away. So St. Louis collapsing while Seattle expanding. And in the United States, if we said, you know what, all of these mid-tier cities kind of suck now.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a lesser football league. We're going to have a lesser baseball league for them. These kids, they can play each other.
Yes.
And the big boys over here in L.A., New York, we'll talk about Philadelphia. We'll see. They're kind of a bubble city. That's going to be a super league.
Yeah.
People would be absolutely
people would be
outraged.
pissed. Yeah.
And what people ought to recognize is that they should be equally outraged at this regional tearing apart that's going on and being fueled by the kind of Amazon capitalism that we have here, because it's creating all of the anger that we're seeing manifest in our politics.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating thing that's happening across the pond. Thanks, everybody, for bringing it to my attention. I will say, I still don't really get why Tampa Bay gets a team, but that's a whole other discussion.
Bunch of teams.
Tomorrow on Rising, we have a full house. Friends Andrew Feldman, Marshall Kosloff, and Roger Fisker with us. And Ryan is going to make another appearance for Crystal. Emily Jasinski, she's going to be here. Plus, Matt Taibbi and David Sirota, they're going to be with us. Remember to hit the subscribe button. Don't miss any of our videos. Don't forget to like and share as well. Thank you to Ryan for filling in, and we will see you all tomorrow.